This is Dr. Wysong. This series of videos on the big questions of life will show where each one of us is led if we dare to leave behind preconceived ideas and see where reason and evidence lead.
Favorite evolutionist proofs. Given the fact that evolution violates the natural laws and logic outlined in the previous chapters, it would seem that the case would be closed. But evolutionists ignore natural laws, facts, and logic, as we have shown. They do this while claiming the banner of science. But science is about facts, experimental proofs, and repeatability. Yet there are no facts or repeatable experiments proving life came from non-life. New beneficial organs appear spontaneously, or creatures transmutate into different and more functionally complex organisms that won't revert to their progenitors. Now please keep in mind that we've already proven that evolution is not only not true, it can't be according to scientific law. That's why any argument for evolution proves to be specious and desperate when examined closely. Here's a few examples. Take the argument from similarity. Similar features are used to prove evolutionary ancestry, but similarity presents more contradictions than evidence. If similarity proved a relationship, the beak of the platypus would relate it to the goose, its hair to a bear, the tail to a beaver, webbed feet to a duck, claws to a reptile, spurs on its hind legs to a rooster, venom to a scorpion, and eggs to a snake. It detects prey like an eel and produces milk but has no nipples. Moreover, consider this: platypus fossils date back 167 million years and have the identical features of the present platypus. An insect can look like a leaf or stick, but insects are clearly not related to leaves or sticks. Cytochrome C is a biochemical that's similar in the carp, bullfrog, turtle, chicken, rabbit, and horse, but no evolutionary tree shows these creatures related. Human hemoglobin, the red blood cell pigment, is very similar to that in worms, and we share about the same number of protein-coding genes, but we're far removed from worms in evolutionary trees. Antigen receptors in camels and nurse sharks are more similar to each other than to creatures in their supposed evolutionary lines. The gulo enzyme is similar in New World and Old World monkeys. However, humans would seem to be more closely related to fruit bats, hamsters, and guinea pigs, since we and they are absent gulo enzymes. We share about 50% of our DNA with bananas. Evolution requires a gradation of simple to complex, less to more. Therefore, it would seem that larger, more complex organisms should have more DNA than simpler ones. However, toads and lilies have far more DNA per cell than humans. Salamanders have 20 times more, and some insects have twice as much. Based on chromosome count, humans are similar to deer and lower on the evolutionary ladder than chimps. Yes, evolutionists can pick and choose similarities in an attempt to support their case of relationships, but logic and science demands examining all the facts before forming a conclusion. Now, if that's done, similarity can be used to both prove and disprove evolution, and it's therefore really no argument at all. Vestigial organs is another so-called proof of evolutionists. They say that some body parts are useless and are only present because they're similar to parts in evolutionary ancestors. Such parts are thus called vestigial. In 1893, Wiedersheim listed 180 such organs. But as knowledge has been gained, the list gets whittled down. It should be 0. Lack of understanding of a body part's function doesn't mean it's useless. The belief in vestigial organs has justified countless surgeries to remove them. Sadly, every such surgery, removing a non-diseased body part, renders the person less healthy in the long term. All parts of the human body have a function. Ignorance of that function doesn't justify surgical pruning. Moreover, if there is a body part with no function, or a detrimental one, that would most likely be the result of mutations or other second-law degradations of the human genome. As previously shown, we are devolving, not evolving. The other factor to consider is epigenetics, which permits the inhibition or expression of different parts of the genome depending upon the needs. For example, wisdom teeth may have been more important in the past because of a diet requiring more mastication than now, but we could also look at goosebumps. They are thought to be a vestige. And they may have been more important in the primitive past when we had lots of body hair to insulate us and were in constant threat of predation and other violence. The muscles in the skin that cause goosebumps would cause the hair to rise up when we were threatened to make us look bigger and more intimidating, just like occurs in a cat. Now when threatened, all we get are bumps because clothes obviated our need for lots of body hair. So epigenetics, the switching of genes that we already have, switching them on and off, not evolution, is at play. Here's some examples of body parts labeled mistakenly as vestigial or unimportant at one time or another, and their subsequent proven functions. Wisdom teeth, which of course can improve mastication. Body hair, it insulates and increases tactile senses. Tailbones provide an anchor for muscles, tendons, and ligaments. The thyroid gland, it now secretes life-essential thyroid hormones. The pineal gland secretes life-essential hormones that control growth, sexual, and circadian rhythms. The vomeronasal organ produces pheromones. The appendix is a part of the immune system. The tonsils, millions of those, of course, have been removed. Millions upon millions. But they are part of the immune system. Adenoids have also been removed plenty, but they're also a part of the immune system. The thymus has been removed, and it produces immune elements. These last three in that list, just notice that given the fact that no health or healing ever occurs without the immune system, it is unthinkable that doctors lopped off millions of immune organs that were not diseased. They justified it with vestigial organ malarkey, prevention as they called it, and the heady materialist hubris that they, with their drugs and surgery, were masters of the human machine. Embryology is another so-called proof of evolution. Virtually every textbook attempting to prove evolution will line up the embryological stages of humans and show their similarities to our supposed ancestors. This is called ontogeny, which means our individual life history, recapitulating phylogeny, which is our supposed evolutionary history. The drawings, which were originally used to demonstrate this, were fudged by Haeckel, I think in 1866, to make the evolutionary case. If ontology is actually recapitulating phylogeny, then women would miscarry fish, amphibians, reptiles, and subhuman primates, but that never happens. Embryology isn't a memory of the past. It's the succession of stages necessary to create the creatures it's designed to be. It would be impossible to develop in the womb from one cell, a zygote, into a human without going through transitions that might look like less complex organisms. The Archaeopteryx is another so-called evolutionary proof. It's a fossil used to show that birds supposedly evolved from dinosaurs. It had feathers like birds and teeth similar to reptiles. However, no intermediaries have ever been found leading to it or away from it, nor have any fossils ever been found showing the evolution of feathers. Archaeopteryx is clearly just a type of bird, a syngamion. It began as an Archaeopteryx and stayed an Archaeopteryx. Moreover, dinosaurs like Velociraptor and Deinonychus are found in rocks 75 million years younger than rocks containing Archaeopteryx. That would make Archaeopteryx and other birds contemporaries of dinosaurs, not their evolved progeny. Horses is another favorite evolutionary proof. Various horse-like animals are commonly arrayed in evolutionary trees. The pictures, drawings, and arrows create a fabricated sequence. This is proven by the fact that the fossils of supposed transitional forms can be found out of sync with the evolutionary progression. That means precursors are found younger than their progeny. That's like saying children beget parents. The fossil record of horses merely shows variety within a kind, or horse-like animals that are kinds or syngamions in their own right. Variety is confused with evolution. Variation such as breeds of horses, dogs, varieties of fruit flies and corn, antibiotic resistance in bacteria, and insecticide resistance by insects shouldn't be confused with the shape-shifting hypothesized in macroevolution, meaning the change of one kind of organism into another, or the emergence of living organisms from a primordial soup. Variety within a syngamion, a kind, is not the same thing as the evolution of new creatures. Even after hundreds of years of breeding and genetic manipulation, creatures remain essentially the same. Cows stay cows, wheat stays wheat. Each interbreeding syngamion has a finite pool of genes. Size, shape, color, strength, speed, and personality all may vary to a degree in a population as a result of random or directed breeding. If the environment favors a particular variation, that creature and its progeny may fare better and predominate. Nobody can disagree that such variation happens, but it's to a degree, and that it helps creatures survive. The key word here is degree. Variety, yes. Evolutionary transmutation, no. Geneticists constantly try to push the envelope, but they always reach a barrier. For example, since the time of Napoleon, sugar beets have been selectively bred to increase sugar yield. They're now at about 18% sugar. In spite of the huge economic reward for moving that percent higher, the limit of the sugar beet syngamion has apparently been reached. Over 800 different breeds of cattle have been created, but all are still cows. Milk production per dairy cow, udder, has increased threefold in just the past few decades. Those changes can't be extrapolated to prove cows came from bubbling volcanic brews, or that one day a cow will evolve into something that's all udder. A Chihuahua is a dog. It's very small and completely different in size from a Great Dane or a Bulldog. But no amount of breeding will stretch that limit so that dogs cannot be identified as dogs. Fruit flies will vary the number of bristles between 25 and 56. After over a century of experimentation and hundreds of thousands of generations, that's the limit. Not only that, if the flies are left to interbreed naturally, they'll revert to the original average of 36. Darwin used finches to make the case for speciation, which means the development of new species. Finches separated geographically had slightly different beaks. He saw this as evidence of natural selection creating new species. However, all of the new finch varieties can interbreed. They're just varieties of one kind of bird syngamion. In just the time since the discovery of the bacterium E. coli in the late 1800s, there have been almost 5 million E. coli generations. But E. coli is still E. coli. The total generations of bacteria since life supposedly first appeared would be trillions upon trillions. Yet they've remained the same. On the other hand, evolutionists would have us believe that humans supposedly evolved from chimp-like creatures in just 300,000 generations. The middle, not the edge, is what is safe. When creatures go out to the extreme edges of their genetic potential, they become sterile and less fit, not more evolved. For example, a mule is a cross between a donkey and a horse, but it's usually sterile. Fruit flies with 56 bristles rather than the average 36 will usually be short-lived and sterile. The genetic drift pressure is always back to the average wild type, the mutt, not new, novel varieties onward and upward in an evolutionary tree. Natural selection works, but it puts pressure on a population toward the middle, toward home base, not out to the weird and novel genetic edges where evolution needs to take place. Extrapolation is another tool so frequently used by evolutionists. But there's no evidence that an infinitely dense marble that exploded 17 billion years ago is responsible for our existence. It's all just assumed to be true because of a superficial story about big things coming from small things and complex things coming from simple things. Moreover, the dictionary definition of evolution makes it easy to conflate the fact that technology, cars, computers, dress, food, and basically everything evolves with the extrapolated notion that life has evolved from atoms. Extrapolation is a wonderful tool of reason, and we all use it every day. However, breeding different sizes, shapes, and colors of dogs doesn't prove that dogs came from guppies. Mutating fruit flies into all kinds of freaky fruit flies doesn't prove fruit flies came from stardust, or that they will one day evolve into eagles. Biological variation is to evolution as a firefly is to lightning. Rather than a true account of biology, evolution is a lineup of hopeful extrapolations culminating in a fantastic belief that does not logically flow from the facts or the laws that govern the universe. In the end, biological variation is not evolution. It's the mere result of various genetic functions, including regulation genes, genetic drift, recombinations, and epigenetics, the switching of genes on and off, and proves nothing except that creatures can vary, adapt, and be different to a degree based upon existing genetic potential. The star witness for the defense of evolution really never comes forward to nail it. We never actually see any direct evidence that life can spontaneously come from non-life and evolve organs and new creatures that don't revert to the wild type. Instead, there's just belief in an ideology with slippery stories, excuses, yarns about what might have been and what could be with vast time and impossible probabilities. Proof is always just around the corner, always just a bit out of reach, always in the mail. All that's needed is some time and more research dollars. If only, promises. That's because all such hopeful ventures are doomed from the get-go. Evolution violates inviolable natural laws, so any proposed proof should be viewed with as much suspicion as a proof that 2 + 2 = 3. Thank you for listening. Keep in mind that solving the big questions requires foundations upon which truthful answers can be built, so please work through the series sequentially. This information has taken decades of research, thought, and writing. Aside from the peace of mind the solutions have brought me, the only reward I seek is hearing that it's helped you. Feel free to contact me with any comments or questions at asifThinkingMatters.com.